Access 2016, Module 5, Part 1. In this segment, we're going to be looking at the pattern match query. So a pattern match query must begin with the word like, and we will use a wildcard as a part of our query. So as an example, if I wanted to choose all of the zip codes that began with 824, I could use a pattern match query that begins with the word like and then has 824 followed by a wildcard. So the first thing we have to understand are the wildcards. So we have 3 wildcards in Access. The asterisk means any character or characters. Could be a letter, could be a number, could be one, could be many. The next wildcard we have is the question mark. That one means any single character. So again, it could be a letter or a number, but it can be only one character in length. The pound symbol means any single numeric digit. So it can only be a number, and it can only be one numeric digit in length. The only one that we will use in this class is the asterisk. The other thing we have to understand is the placement of our wildcard and what that means. So if I started with 8*824, which was our earlier example, that means it ends in 824. If I used 824 asterisk, that means it begins with 824. And finally, if I had an asterisk on both sides of 824, that would mean that it can contain 824 anywhere in the field. So when working with these pattern match queries, you have to first determine what the pattern is. So what is the constant information in our example, 824? And then we have to figure out where the placement of our wildcards need to be to cause the results to be what we want them. So if we wanted to begin with, the asterisk has to go at the end so that the 824 starts our pattern. Again, this does not mean that the 824 has to be in the middle. It means it can be anywhere in the field if you have the 2 asterisks. So we're going to go ahead and get into our Access database that we're using today. And that is the Care Center database. Now if you haven't got this one open, you should be able to locate it in the files that you copied from the Q drive. It's going to be in the Access to /module folder. And it is called Care Center. When you open it up, you should see several tables. You'll notice that they use a slightly different naming technique in this particular database. They add an abbreviation for the object type in front of the names. So you can see query is abbreviated, form is abbreviated, report, and table. The other thing that's helpful to see sometimes when you open a new database to work with is to go to the relationships on the database tools and see the relationships that they have established between the different fields or tables, excuse me. All right, so we're going to begin working with our pattern match query. So what we're going to start with is we're going to go to the Create tab. Most of our work in Module 5 is going to be in Query Design. Query Wizard has 4 specific options, so unless they ask for one of those options by name, you're going to choose Query Design. Pattern Match needs to begin on Query Design. Now we're going to add in a table. So we're going to start out by adding in the owner table. You can either double click or click on it and click Add. And since that is the only table we need, we can close our Show Table box. Remember that if we forgot one, we can come up here and click Show Table. Next, I like to extend the box down until I see all the fields. We learned before that there were 2 ways to add fields. We could double click, which would add them in the first available column, or we could click on a field and drag it specifically where we wanted it. But what if I want all of the fields in the table in the order that they're in? Then I can double click on the table name, and you'll notice it highlights all of the fields. Grab one of the fields, it doesn't matter which one, and bring them down into the table. It will populate all of the fields starting at that point in the same order that you see them in the table. So we're trying to get a criteria that says I want all of the zip codes that look like or begin with 824. And we don't care what the last digits are in the zip code. So you're going to click under the zip code field in the criteria box, and you're going to type the word like. Then, in quotes, you're going to put your pattern. So we are going to say 824. And since that's what it needs to begin with, we're going to put our wildcard or our asterisk at the end and close our quotes. So like space in quotes 824 asterisk. And then we're going to click Run. When you click Run, you should look at the results of your query to ensure that all of the records actually begin with 824, since that is what you were trying to get. Since they do, I'm going to click Save. Notice, until I save, it's not listed over here in my object pane, and it does not have a name on the tab. So I'm going to save, and I'm going to call this QRY, and then 824 BEG zip. Now sometimes when I'm working with these in class, I'll sometimes add the name of the type of query it is, like such as pattern. That way students could go in and refer back to it if they're trying to remember how to do that type of query. So if you're going to refer back to this file again later, you could type pattern match as part of the name as well. And that would give you something to go back to and say, this is what the pattern match query looked like. Go ahead and click OK. And now it is saved. Okay, if I wanted to change this first record so that they actually said your first and last name instead of student, we could tab and we can make those changes here in a query, even though it's not all of the records. I could type my name in there, or you would type yours. And again, when I go to the next record and the pencil disappears, this change has been saved. Now, even though I changed the data in the query, when I open up the owner table, you'll notice that it also is changed in the table. So I'm going to close the table. And let's go ahead and do one more pattern match. So if I look at my owner data, you can see that I have area codes and I have their phone numbers. So if I wanted to get all of the phone numbers that were in a different area code, so we have 307, and obviously you can see that's the main area code because most of our numbers are there. So let's create a query that would give me those that begin with 406, since those are less prevalent. So again, I'm going to go to Create, and I'm going to go to Query Design. I'm going to go ahead and add this owner. And I'm going to drag the box shape down so I can see all my fields. You'll want to practice adding all the fields at once several times, because this is going to be a time-saving technique that will help you on your case exam. So I am going to start out by double-clicking on the title name, the table name, excuse me, at the top. Grab a field, drag it down, and populate it in. It will bring in all of those fields. So we are going to go into the phone field, and we want all the phone numbers that begin with 406. So we're going to type like, space, and then in quotes, 406, asterisk, and quote. I'm going to click Run, and I would want to make sure that the query worked, that only 406 area code phone numbers were showing up. Since that is right, I'm going to go ahead and click Save. We're just making this one up, so we're going to call it Query 406 area code And again, it is a pattern match. You don't need to add that to the names if you're not going to refer back to this at a later point, but it might be helpful information if you want to look back when you're studying later. That is our pattern match query. So again, if you look back, you want to focus in on the placement of the wildcard and what that means. So in addition to using a wildcard, you have to figure out where to place it and how many wildcards you need, 1 or 2.